week 11 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few quarterbacks I would start this week. The first guy, Russell Wilson of the Seattle Seahawks. So Wilson, we know he came back last week versus the Green Bay Packers after breaking his hand and getting pins in it, and he had a bad ball game, no doubt about it, in week 10. 161 passing yards, 2 interceptions, and 32 yards rushing. So this Packer defense this season, what a season it's been for them. No doubt about it. And right here in Week 11, pretty tough matchup on paper. Russell Wilson and the Seahawk team versus the Arizona Cardinals. They give up the 5th least amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. But right here, Wilson was a little rusty, no doubt about it, after not playing for a month. But right here, I think he gets back on track versus Arizona. I know the weather wasn't as great as well in Green Bay with a little snow flurries in that ball game, because even Aaron Rodgers didn't throw the football well. But right here, I think he gets right versus Arizona in pretty much a must-win game for the Seattle Seahawks team, because if they lose this game, their chances of making the playoffs are pretty much over unless they run the table or something. So right here, Wilson, he's back at home, back in front of the 12th man, big division ball game. And I think in this one, Wilson bounces back and could get anywhere from 25 to 30 fantasy points in this one, and he's still a quarterback I definitely would start this week. The next quarterback, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's been a pretty good season here, no doubt about it for Joe Burrow, except the flop in Week 9 versus the Cleveland Browns. So the last few weeks before that, Week 7 at Baltimore, 416 passing yards, 3 touchdowns and an interception. Week 8 at the Jets, 259 passing yards and 3 touchdowns and an into. And then Week 9 versus the Browns, 282, 2 windows in that ball game. So they had the bye in Week 10 with Cincinnati. And now Week 11, a great matchup indoors at the Las Vegas Raiders. We saw Patrick Mahomes and this Kansas City Chiefs offense finally look right for the first or second time this season. So right here, Burrow, he's got a great amount of weapons on this offense. Obviously, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, C.J. Uzomah's had a few good games this season. And the Raiders, they don't really stop anyone. They give up the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. And I think in this ball game, Joe Burrow could have a good one. And he's definitely a quarterback I would start this week. The next quarterback is Mac Jones of the New England Patriots. So the Patriots play on Thursday Night Football this week. And Mac Jones, he hasn't had the greatest of seasons in his rookie year. But this Patriot team, they're still going out there and winning ball games with their defense and their running back committee over there. So the last few games for Jones, Week 7 versus the Jets, 307 pass yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 8 at the Chargers, 217 passing yards, 10 rushing yards, and a 2-point conversion. Week 9 at the Panthers, 139 passing yards, a touchdown, and an into, and a fumble loss. And then Week 10 versus Cleveland, a huge ball game, 198 passing yards, and 3 touchdowns. So right here on the schedule this week, a great matchup at the Falcons that give up the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. We saw the Falcons get destroyed versus the Dallas Cowboys in Week 10, where they gave up 43 points in that one. So right here, Mac Jones, I think he could go for 200 to 250 with possibly 2 touchdowns in this one. And he's a quarterback I have confidence in this week and would start. The next quarterback is Jimmy Garoppolo of the San Francisco 49ers. So Garoppolo, ever since he returned, he's been pretty solid, no doubt about it, is Jimmy G. He returned in Week 7. I know that game, it was pouring out, and he couldn't do much in that one. But besides that, Week 8 at Chicago, 322 passing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion. Week 9 versus the Cardinals, 326, 2 passing touchdowns, and an into. And then Week 10 on Monday Night Football, yeah, they managed the game a lot and ran the ball a lot, obviously, was this 49er team. But it worked in their favor, and they destroyed the Rams 31-10, 182 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. So right here, Week 11, a great matchup at the Jacksonville Jaguars, where a lot of teams go up and down the field on them and score the football. And I think Jimmy G has a good one in this one, and he's a guy still available in 75% of fantasy leagues, but he's definitely a quarterback I would start this week. And the 5th and final quarterback I would start this week's Cam Newton of the Carolina Panthers. So it looks like Cam Newton's going to be the starter. All reports are saying that they're preparing him as the starter this week as the Panthers. And hey, why not? P.J. Walker, in my opinion, he looked pretty decent though versus the Arizona Cardinals. But they gave Cam Newton all this money here with $10 million he can make up to for the rest of the season. And that's big-time starter money, no doubt about it. And Newton, we saw a decent appearance from him in Week 10 at Arizona in his debut. 8 passing yards and a touchdown at the goal line to Robbie Anderson. And then 3 rush attempts with a touchdown for 14 yards. So right here, he's got a matchup of all matchups in his return to the starting lineup in this one versus the Washington football team that gives up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So it wouldn't surprise me if Cam could get 20, 25 fantasy points in this one. And obviously with his rushing ability, this guy, he gets a bonus 6 or 7 points each and every week at least rushing the football. So he's a quarterback I would start this week. So that's a few quarterbacks I would start in Week 11 of the fantasy football season.